My task is to make a soft introduction to the issue of presbyopia. Actually, as you already heard, the title is Presbyopia. Is it the first visual problem of mankind? It's a historical issue. Therefore, let's talk about some history, asking ourselves whether it was the first visual problem of mankind. We have to ask for some information to Mr. Darwin. You see, when he was born and when he died in the 1900s, he decided to embark on a vessel going around the world to collect data on the fauna and flora of the world at the age of 22. He was a biologist, and this trip lasted 5 years. From 31 to 36, he stopped in the Galapagos Islands. In 36, he was back, and approximately 30 years later, The Origin of Species was published. We're used to somehow summarize his thoughts with slogans. For example, that we come from monkeys. Slogans may contain truths, but it's not just about that. We have some relatives with the monkeys and apes. But this is not the place to argue about this. If we accept the fact that we come from apes, I discovered through Darwin that there is a monkey in the Borneo forest. There's a dozen of apes, Cercopithecus, 10-kilogram weight, and they are called presbytes. This is Presbytes siamensis, with white-colored thighs. They live in the Borneo forest. If we come from apes and some apes are presbytes, then the problem is older than mankind. I'm joking. It's just a play on words. Evolution doesn't have anything to do with this. Now, presbyopia, as we saw from the title of the conference, where you have the name written in Greek letters, presbyopia has a Greek origin, opsia, sight, and presbytes. So the sight of those that were born earlier. Presbyopia is a sign of old age, which becomes apparent only in the adult age, but it's part of the aging history. We are born and we become presbyopic immediately afterwards. It's mathematical. It's a bit like comparing aphoria, which becomes atropia in the adult age. It's a bit of an exaggerated comparison, but I think we can make it. Back in history, let's see who first talked about presbyopia. Who is it that did that? Well, already in the Middle Ages, mention was made to presbyopia. Presbyopia was actually coined by Donders. in 1800, but in the Middle Ages, they said that sight would get worse with old age. Already at the time of the Roman Empire, mention was made to presbyopia. This guy is Plinius the Elder. We saw him also in Neru's slide before. Plinius the Elder was a scholar born probably in Como in 23, and being a scholar, he did not like the periphery of the empire and moved to Rome, the core of culture. He went to Rome when the emperor was Nero, Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus. Well, we have some music, some soundtrack as well today. Nero, the emperor, got the throne of Rome at the age of 15. At the age of 31, he died after spending a brilliant life. Meanwhile, he killed his mother, his 3 wives. He had friends and relatives killed by others, and perhaps he also put Rome on fire. We don't know. The Romans that knew him very well tried to oppose him, but eventually he committed suicide. Well, this guy, Plinius the Elder, tried to avoid staying in Rome because of this emperor. He moved to Stabia near the Vesuvius, so he escaped the fire in Rome but died because of the eruption of the Vesuvius. We know all this from his nephew, Plinius the Younger. But meanwhile, he wrote this Naturalis Historia, which is a summary, a sort of encyclopedia, the first encyclopedia of what was known in those ages. Here you see what is his reminder in the cathedral in Como. You see that this book mentions Nero, the emperor. It's got 37 volumes. In book 37, mention is made to precious stones. Nero's passion was the emerald. In book 37, just before this page, mention is made to Smaragdus Neronis, the emerald of Nero. He always wore an emerald ring while watching the games. There was a scholar of the 4th century before Christ in Greece, Callistratus, mentioned by Plinius, and he said that wearing a certain type of amber works like a good luck charm. This amber is ground to powder and mixed with Attican honey. This is useful for reduced vision. Then Plinius mentions that this packing of honey and amber powder is not just useful for presbyopia, for reduced vision, but also for stranguria, which is currently called prostatitis. So it would be good for the prostate and micturition problems, but it doesn't really say where this packing should be applied, perhaps here and there. Maybe if there had been book 38, he would have said where to apply the packing. So it's useful for both indications. To pay homage to the Greek origin of the word presbyopia, I checked out what people would say in Greece in the old times. Dio Chrysostom, 1 century after Christ, in Turkey, wrote in praise of hair. Instead, Synesius of Cyrene, Cyrene is in Libya, where the boats leave to reach Italy with the migrants. 1 century later, wrote the eulogy of boldness. In the eulogy of boldness, Synesius, and this is his text, said very interesting things. It's a text that you can see, that you can find in bookshops. The original version and also the translation into Italian. Maybe some of you would be interested in buying it for 10 euros. You can keep it on your bedside. This is the text. Synesius says that boldness is good for all ailments. He said in the 3rd century after Christ, when the Roman Empire still existed, but this bishop had studied in Greece, so he wrote in Greek. He said that the trick in his area was to shave one's head completely, because the idea was that hair was a carrier of diseases. It's a bit like what happened in the Middle Ages with bloodletting. He said, let's remove all the hair, which is a carrier of diseases. He stated, by eliminating the burden of the mane, you can eliminate deafness, catarrh, reduced vision, and all other headache problems. Also, the feet and the gut would draw benefit from shaving one's own head. 1,000 years later, we had Petrarch in Italy. This is the first graduate in history. In the mid-14th century, he wrote a letter. It's an autobiographical letter that he left to the future readers. He was telling about himself. It's a sort of autobiography, so something comparable to what modern VIPs would do. It was a long letter, many pages. At the end, he wrote that throughout his life he had good vision, but it started getting weaker at the age of 60. So even if reluctantly, I had to adopt spectacles. So this poet became presbyopic at the age of 60. We have seen slides of Methuselah, who was much older, but there were no documents in those days, so you don't actually know when people were born exactly. We get presbyopic at the age of 40, but if you are a famous poet, you may even become presbyopic at the age of 60. The date of this document is 1350. Spectacles already existed then, but they were not largely widespread. It was difficult to find them. Nobody knew who would make them. Instead, he was able to find spectacles, wear them, even if a bit reluctantly. It's a bit like the metaphor of our protection, of our profession. You know, if you find one to whom you can fit lenses and speaks well about them, it's fine. But if people don't speak well about lenses, that's a problem. And it's always been like this for us. He also made the same mistake. So he wrote that spectacles were of great help to him, but he reluctantly used them. We have to reflect on this because, times have changed, but the attitude is still the same. You reluctantly wear your lenses today as well. Thank you.